You're sitting with someone you love. They ask what you want. You say, whatever you want. They ask what you really think. You say, it's fine. You disagree with something they said. The disagreement forms, and then, almost before you notice, you swallow it. Not because they threatened you, because something in you calculated in a fraction of a second that agreement was safer than truth. Here's the uncomfortable question. What if you're not keeping the peace anymore? What if you're hiding from the one person you're supposed to be closest to? Logic says this shouldn't happen. The people who know you best, who've seen your worst, who stayed anyway, those should be the easiest people to be honest with. But for many people, the opposite is true. The closer the relationship becomes, the more carefully they edit themselves. Not dramatically, gradually. A softened opinion, a need left unmentioned, an irritation quietly swallowed, and not always through conscious deception. Often it happens automatically, like a reflex they don't remember developing. This is the paradox at the center of intimate relationships. The closer someone is to us, the more their opinion can feel like a verdict, and the more dangerous it feels to be fully seen. Here's where it starts. When a relationship matters, the brain pays more attention to it. A reply comes back shorter than usual. Their tone carries something cooler. They go quiet when they'd normally engage. You notice. Naomi Eisenberger's research at UCLA found that social pain, the threat of rejection from someone close, activates some of the same neural circuitry as physical pain. Being pushed away by someone you matter isn't merely emotional. It registers as a threat signal. This is not a character flaw. It's an evolved mechanism. The problem is what happens next. Because the closer someone matters, the more psychological weight their reactions carry. A stranger disapproving of your opinion stings for a moment. Someone you've built your life around looking at you differently after you've said something honest, that lands somewhere else entirely. And so the brain runs a quiet calculation. If I say what I actually think, what might I lose? Silence starts to feel cheaper than risk. But here's what makes this so difficult to catch. It doesn't happen all at once. You disagree once. They react badly. You soften your position next time. You express a need. They minimize it. You stop bringing that need up. You show something vulnerable. They make you feel strange for it. You become more guarded. Each moment is small, but the brain is learning from every one of them. Dana Jack's research on self-silencing in intimate relationships found that people don't silence themselves because they're commanded to. They infer what fits inside the relationship and quietly stop offering what doesn't. At some point, the editing stops feeling like a choice. You've learned which parts of yourself feel safe to show, and which parts have stopped being offered at all. Eventually, you stop knowing what you actually want, not as a metaphor. Someone asks and there's a small blankness where the answer should be. And here's where it gets complicated. None of this feels like fear. It feels like loyalty, like being easygoing, like keeping the peace. I'm just not someone who makes everything about themselves. But there's a line worth finding. On one side, I choose to compromise because I care about you. On the other, I disappear because I'm afraid you won't love me if you see the full version. These look identical from the outside. They feel almost identical from the inside. But one comes from security, the other from fear. And you cannot build genuine closeness with someone you're simultaneously hiding from. They don't get to love you. They get to love the version of you that cleared every internal filter first. So what does the alternative actually look like? Not tearing everything down, not saying everything you've held back. Small things. Say what you actually want for dinner. Express a minor disagreement, not a confrontation, just a different opinion. Say, I didn't like that, instead of, it's fine. Ask for something without prefacing it with an apology. Stop automatically editing yourself before anyone has asked you to. Notice the moment before the edit, the sentence that forms and then gets revised, the need that surfaces and then gets dismissed. Just notice. That's where it starts. And then ask one question, not as a confrontation, as information. What happens when I become slightly more honest? A relationship with genuine safety has room for disagreement, for vulnerability, for the version of you that isn't convenient. If small honesty consistently leads to withdrawal, punishment, or silence that feels threatening, that's important information. Not necessarily that the other person is cruel, but that the relationship, as it currently exists, may not have the safety that real closeness requires. You're sitting with someone you love. They ask what you want. This time, you answer. Not dramatically, not as a confrontation. You just say it. The goal was never to become someone who doesn't fear rejection. Fear is part of loving something. The goal is to stop abandoning yourself in advance. Stop erasing yourself before anyone has asked you to prevent a rejection that may never have been coming. Because when you edit everything first, the other person doesn't get to love you, and you don't get to feel loved, because some part of you always knows they haven't seen the real one. The right people, don't need the safest version of you. They need the real one.